Hello BookTube, Sarah here and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm coming to you with my weekly reads for November 11th, 2017. So I know you guys are like, isn't this normally supposed to be your weekend reads? Yes it is, but I've been toying with doing this idea again for a little while. When I first started my channel, I used to do weekly wrap-ups. And, at the end of every week I would do a wrap-up of all the books that I read. Well, the problem was at the time is that I was maybe only finishing one book, and it was kind of boring to just be wrapping up one book. Essentially, it's just a review. So now I'm reading a lot more books, and I know that my wrap-ups at the end of the month tend to get long. And I know a lot of you enjoy that, and bless you for saying so. But I do like to talk, and I do find I'm reining myself in, especially if it's a book I really enjoyed or a book I really didn't like, to talk a lot about, why I did or why I didn't, because I want to keep them, at a relatively decent length of time. Plus the fact that some of the books I read like, a month earlier, and a lot of the details I tend to forget because when you're reading a lot, unless you really, really love the book for certain reasons or really didn't like it, there are certain things that you forget. And that really bothers me that that's happening. And I really want to share with you guys all these books I'm reading because that's what's so grand about YouTube, or BookTube, excuse me. It's about sharing all these books that we're reading. You know what I mean? So I've now decided to start doing weekly reads. So essentially what I'm going to be doing is wrapping up the books that I've read in the last week, talking about the books I'm going to be reading, that I'm currently reading. And yeah, so that's pretty much what I'm going to be doing. I'm still going to be doing my wrap-ups at the end of every month because I'm still going to do my stats because I do love doing my stats. And I'm still going to be telling you guys the books that I read, like all the books I read that month. And again, in the order from least favorite to most favorite. I just will not be going into detail like I have been now because there's no sense in me doing this twice, essentially. So, without any further ado, let's start off with the tea that I'm drinking today. My tea for today, you guys can see, it's in my Starbucks mug. I've had this mug forever, and I just absolutely love it because it's so big. I'm still going through some of the David's teas from last Christmas's calendar, and this is Sugar Plum Forest. It is a really, really nice, it's a herbal tea, and it's a really nice fruity tea with some spice to it. Unfortunately, I don't think it's available this year, sorry. At least it's not now. I checked the website. Maybe it'll come out later, like in December or something, but as of right now, unfortunately, it's not available. I don't know if it's in the calendar. I should have checked that. I will look and I will post it here if it's in the calendar. If it shows up in this year's David's Tea calendar, they're probably bringing it out this year, so I'll post that right here. But anyway, yes, this is a yummy, yummy tea. And if it's not available, I'm sorry. So let's jump into what I have read already this week. So the first book that I finished, and with these I'm not going in order from least favorite to most favorite. I'm just going to do them in the order that I read them in. So the first book is A Rogue by Any Other Name by Sarah McClane. This was narrated on audio by Rosalind Landor. I gave it 4 stars and 3 hearts. It has a 3.94 average rating on Goodreads. And it is the first book in the Rules of Scoundrels series. I got 3 challenges complete out of this book, and that was, first of all, the Triple RC challenge for November, number 2, which was Happy Anniversary, which is find another member and, rate a book that both of you have on your bookshelf, essentially. The second one was for the Candyland Quarterly Challenge. This was one of the bonus tasks for the red cover, obviously, as you can see from the cover. And the last one is for a new challenge I'm doing, and it's in the group called A Million More Pages. And it's the KMMP challenge, and it's for week number 1. So essentially what this is we're divided into 4 groups, and we're all a radio station. And you can pick whether you want to be the station manager, and if you're the station manager, you have to read more books every week. Or in my case, I'm just going as a DJ or a reporter. So essentially I have to read 1 book every week. And what they do is they post a list of like 16 songs, like a playlist. And each week it's a different genre. So like the very first week it was New Wave, which is a genre of music I didn't really listen to, or I don't listen to. This week's is, I think, like metal, or, right, like a heavy metal kind of idea. So of course all these songs are listed, and then there's prompts for each song. So each DJ picks a different prompt. So the whole goal is to read books to fit every song in that category. It's a lot of fun. So for the first week, I don't remember what the song was, But the challenge was to read a book with a wealthy character, and this one obviously fit the bill. So this was a really great story. It was about a girl named Penelope, and she had a failed engagement when she was much younger. She was engaged, and then he broke off the engagement with her. Well, back, I guess, in Regency times, she was kind of now scorned, if you will. And she was looked at as damaged property, even though that nothing happened between the two of them, but it was almost like a, well, why couldn't you keep him liking you? Because it was like 2 weeks after he split up with her, he married somebody else. So it was kind of like, why couldn't you, you know, keep him in love with you, kind of a thing. So she's now 28 and on her way to being a spinster, and she's the oldest of 5 daughters, I think it is, because her 2 next youngest sisters are married, but they kind of had to marry like just for the fact to marry, because almost like the scandal that has her followed her sisters as well. And so the father has put this large dowry, including land, on her to hopefully catch a husband for her, because he does not want her to be a spinster. And he wants somebody to take care of her, essentially. And the gentleman in the story, who goes by the name of Bourne, his first name is Michael, but he goes by Bourne, the land that is now attached to Penelope's dowry was actually his land that he lost 10 years earlier in a card game. And then, so now, in order for him to get that land back, he decides to marry Penelope. And the story goes from there. And he runs this gaming establishment, essentially a casino in London. And the very wealthy and the very elite go there, but it's, you know, underground and not everybody knows about it. And, you know, he essentially married her for the dowry, but they did know each other as children. Their lands are connected to each other, essentially. So, you know, it was a really nice story. It wasn't overly spicy. The parts where it did get into the adult content, it got very spicy, but it only happened a couple times. Like, it wasn't constant throughout the book, if that makes sense. You know, I really liked both Penelope and Michael. I thought that they were great characters. And you meet some of the other characters, the other co-owners of this casino, and they are going to each have their own books coming up after this one. So I'm very, very much looking forward to continuing with the series. The narration was really good. Now, I listened to all my audiobooks at double speed. It's A, quicker for me to get through them, and B, I find now that I've been doing that if I slow it down to normal speed, it's far too slow for me. And I do read relatively quickly, so it's easy enough for me to speed up these audiobooks. But I did find with this narration that certain words and phrases were kind of garbled when it got sped up, and it's fine. I mean, I still got the gist of the story. It's just certain things I might have missed. But, you know, stuff's explained anyway, so it's not like I was missing anything. It's just, again, certain words and phrases. She did a really good job of the different voices. Penelope's voice and Michael's voice and Penelope's father and her sisters. One of my favorite scenes in this book, it was kind of like seeing that slice of life in that time period. That's what I love so much about reading historical books, is that, you know, seeing the day-to-day stuff. That's the stuff that really interests me. And there's this great scene, because this whole book takes place like in January, February, and Penelope and her 2 younger sisters go skating in Mayfair Park, I think it is. And it's just a great scene of them, like the chestnut vendor and all these fashionable people in London out at this park skating. It was such a mundane part of the book, but it was probably the scene that stood out most in my head. I know that sounds weird, but it was, because, again, I just love the day-to-day life of stuff like that. So that's the first book. The second book was A Thankful Heart by Melissa McClone. I gave this book 4 stars, and it has 2 hearts. It has a 4.23 average rating on Goodreads. It is book number 2 in the Love at the Chocolate Shop series, and I got 2 challenges out of this one. This was, again, for my Triple RC November monthly challenge, number 4, which was Chicken Soup for the Soul Day, which was read a book that I think makes you, like, happy or something like that. And then the second one was another Candyland Quarterly Challenge. This was for challenge number 21, which was Ice Cream Sea, a bubbly ice cream sea where Queen Frostine resides. Read a book set at sea, or a book with a queen, or a book with a character with a bubbly personality. Well, the main character, Dakota, in this had a very bubbly personality. She also works at the chocolate shop, excuse me, and she is also working for a dog rescue, or an animal rescue, excuse me, as a volunteer. And this book takes place in November for the Thanksgiving season. And Bryce comes to town because his father, Walt, who resides in this small town in Montana, I thought it was in Texas, it's in Montana, he normally lives in Seattle, but his father fell off a roof and broke both of his legs. So he came back to the small town to stay with his father for a month to help him recuperate. And he then meets Dakota. And the two of them butt heads right from the very beginning. Bryce does not like Dakota. He thinks that she's like swindling his father almost. Because, you know, she's very good friends with his dad, and his dad is a contractor, and he comes over and often helps fix things at the animal shelter and things like that. And, you know, the son, Bryce, thinks that, you know, his dad is, like, seeing a pretty girl and, you know, thinks, oh, this is great, you know, like, I'll help her and she'll like me. And, you know, at the very beginning, there's a question about a relationship there, but of course there's not. And then the two, Bryce and Dakota, are kind of thrown together. Because there's a flood, like a pipe burst at the animal shelter. So Bryce, who's also a contractor, agrees to come in and help. So he's there for a month anyway. The two of them start dating. There's, you know, they have a lot of problems though because he's dead set on going back to Seattle and taking his dad with him. Part of the reason he's there in this town is not only to help him get back on his feet, literally, but to tell him he needs to move closer to him. Like, he needs to move to Seattle. So in case something happens, they're together. And, you know, the dad, Walt, is pretty much saying, well, why can't you come here? Why do I have to go there? I like it here. I have friends here, blah, blah, blah. It's a really great story. Again, it was only 2 parts. There is no adult content in this story at all. A few kisses, and that's pretty much all that you get in this one, which is, it's actually really nice, and I really do like reading those every now and then. I like both. I can appreciate both types of story. And, yeah, I really love this series so, so much. I love this small town. And I'm so looking forward to the next book in the series. So the next book that I finished this week was a complete departure from A Thankful Heart. I mean, about as big of a departure as you could possibly get. They're completely different books. And that is No Darker Place by Deborah Webb. This was narrated on audio by Shannon McManus. I gave it 4.5 stars. I am not going to give it a heart rating because I'll explain when I get into talking about the book. But this one was different and disturbing. It has an average rating of 4.19 stars on Goodreads. It is the first book in the Shades of Death series. I got 3 challenges done out of this one, and the first was, of course, a November RRRC monthly challenge for number 1, which is N is for November. The second one was for the Pass the Parcel challenge I've been doing, round number 9, and this is week number 9's challenge, which was read a book that spells out Candyland. So because Candyland is like the theme for the whole Pass the Parcel for round 9, the team was challenged to each member to read a different book starting with a different letter in Candyland to spell out Candyland. So this one fit for N. And the last one was also for the Candyland Quarterly Challenge for task number 10, which is Queen Frostine. She was renamed Princess Frostine after the 2002 edition. Read a book by an author or character that uses a pseudonym, or a book with a character who is undercover or who has changed their name. And Nick, one of the main characters in the story, goes by a pseudonym and has pretty much gone undercover to assist with this case. So, the whole backstory to this is, and I didn't realize this until I was about halfway through the audiobook, there is a like a 0.5 that comes before the first book, which is the story that happens to Bobby prior to this book. So, essentially what it is I am going to go back and read that prequel, but I don't think you need to appreciate this story. I now know what happens in that prequel because I've read this one, but I still want to go back and read it anyway. It's not available on audio. I'm going to have to read it on an ebook, but I think it's only like 60 pages long. Essentially, the backstory is that Bobby was kidnapped by a serial killer and tortured, mentally, physically tortured. She was broken, completely broken, again, both mentally and physically. And she was in the hospital and in rehab for months and months. And this is now 8 months after she escaped and has healed. She's a police detective, and now she's back at the police force. And this story starts right off the ground running, essentially, with Bobby at a hostage negotiation situation. And it turns out that this serial killer is involved. I don't want to give away too many details. But essentially, this entire story is her hunting for this serial killer called the Storyteller, when he kidnaps his victims, and after he's done torturing them and what have you, he tattoos a story on their back, and she still bears the tattoo that he gave her from when she was held captive. This book is, I gave it 4.5 stars. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. I could not put it down. Like I think I said in my review, on one hand, this story was so disturbing that I had a very difficult time reading it, but on the other hand, I had a very difficult time putting it down because it was so good. It got to the point where, you know, I dropped my husband off because he works nights, and typically, you know, on my way home from dropping him off, I mean, it's dark, it's like, you know, 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, I'm driving in the car home, that 20-minute drive, I would pop in an audiobook. I couldn't put this one on because it would have just creeped me out too much. There are scenes where you get into the killer's head and you're seeing things from his perspective, and it's disturbing. I can't use the word disturbing enough. As I said, I was not giving this one a heart rating. There is a lot of sexual content in this book, but it's not consented. He rapes his victims, both male and female. There's nothing graphically descriptive about it, but the fact that it's mentioned, I wanted to point that out in case that's a trigger for anybody. It's a difficult read when you're getting behind the eyes of the killer. You know, but just so good, and how broken Bobby was, because, you know, this killer, and you find this out within the first few pages, he killed her husband and young son, so she's now blaming herself for their deaths because she couldn't protect them, essentially. And Nick Slade is come in, and he's like a serial killer catcher. He's not hired by, like, he's not an FBI agent or anything like that. He kind of works on his own pro bono, if you will. He doesn't get paid for what he does, but he's an expert at catching serial killers. And this is the first book for the two of them. And what I was actually very pleased to see, this is labeled as a romantic suspense. There was no romance in this book. And you know what? I am really grateful for that, because the things that happened to Bobby happened only 8 months earlier, 8 months prior to the story beginning. And the story only takes place over the course of about a week. There is some sparks between her and Nick, but there's nothing that happens. And again, I'm really happy about that because it was realistic. After going through what she went through at the hands of this killer, for her to finally, like, to stumble into bed with somebody or to start a relationship with somebody just seemed very out of character, and I appreciated that the author didn't go there. There is one scene with the two of them, and he's very, very nice to her and very helpful to her after something happens to her. And it could be construed as something, you know, he helped her bathe, essentially. And it could have gone to that point, but it didn't. And, you know, it was just, he was being nice, he was helping her, she was broken. So, you know what I mean? Yeah, if you like that kind of thing, it was funny when I posted my review for the Pass the Parcel group, and I you know, I talk about all these things in my review, how disturbing some of these things were. Two of the ladies posted, "Ooh, I might have to read that." This might be for some of you. I liked it, and I will be continuing on with the series. And I feel funny saying I liked it because of how disturbing it was, but it was such a good read, and I do recommend it if that's what you're into, you know. Sorry, sip of tea. The last book that I finished this week was Stacey's Mistake by Ann M. Martin. This is book number 18 in the Babysitters Club series. I give it 3.5 stars, and it has an average rating of 3.79 stars on Goodreads. Doing these weekly reads now, I can talk to you guys about the Babysitters Club books instead of just glossing through them. This one was really cute. The babysitters all come to New York City to see Stacey, and they are tasked with babysitting 10 children on a Saturday while all the parents in this building are in a meeting about homelessness. There were a couple things that were written about New York in here. Now, I've never been to New York City, but they were cliches, and, you know, there's one that, you know, they keep going on and on about how great this beautiful apartment is that Stacey lives in, and there, you know, there's a penthouse and all these things. But at the very opening scene in the book, she's reading a postcard or something from one of her friends, and a cockroach goes across the floor. I have a very difficult time believing that they would have an infestation in a building that's supposedly that nice. Now, I could be wrong, but I would think that the maintenance staff would be on top of those kind of things. You know, the homelessness, you know, it's talked about because it is a part of the story that the parents are all going to this meeting, or the residents of this building are going to this meeting to talk about the homeless situation in the area. That, you know, oh, it's going to be fine. Like, you know, at the end, they're going to open a soup kitchen and all is going to be well. Well, you know, I mean, again, this is a story for middle graders, so you got to take it with a grain of salt. It was a lot of fun, though, reading about the babysitters taking these kids out to, like, the Natural History Museum and then going to Central Park and talking about the children's zoo in the park and, you know, the pond and the Alice in Wonderland statue. They go to Bloomingdale's and, you know, it's like what to see and do in New York City. It was a really cute book. I really enjoyed it. And yeah, I'm as I've said before, enjoying rereading through this series. So what am I currently reading? My current audiobook is A Bollywood Affair by Sonali Dev. This is narrated on audio by Priya Ayar. She's doing a wonderful job. This is such a great story. It's about a young a girl who's, I think she's 24, and at the age of 4, she was married to a 12-year-old boy in her village. She comes from a very small village. I guess that's the culture of the village. You know, nothing weird happened, but they were married to each other and then kind of go their separate ways. And then the whole thing was that when they become adults, they were to meet back up again, but they will have been married. And I guess this was commonplace, or maybe still is. I'm not too sure, to be completely honest. But she's a young, poor girl from the village. The boy ends up leaving with his mother and half-brother, and they go and flee this village because the grandfather pretty much beats the boy, the half-brother, her brother-in-law, essentially, for lack of a better term. And they end up fleeing the city. So she hasn't actually seen her husband in 20 years. And she didn't want to be just some poor girl from the village, so she goes ahead and gets her education. And as part of getting her education, she ends up actually coming to America and finishing off part of her degree at a university in, I want to say, Minnesota, I think. I'm not absolutely certain, but somewhere around there. Well, now the boy that she married is a grown man, and he has married another woman. And the marriage, as far as he knew, was annulled. That, you know, nothing ever happened. The marriage was never, you know, it wasn't legal in some parts, I guess, of India, and it was annulled. And so he went on to believe this. Well, it turns out that she had never signed the paperwork. So the half-brother, Samir, is now going to America to meet Millie, which is the main girl in the story, and to get her to sign this paperwork. Well, when they first meet up, she thinks he's there for something else and runs from him and ends up getting hurt. So he ends up staying with her and, like, in the apartment building and taking care of her. And it's kind of this big lie. He doesn't tell her why he's actually there, that he needs her to sign these papers for her brother, or for his brother, and all these things. And it's a really, really great story. I'm really enjoying it. There's a lot of deeper issues going on here with the whole young marriage, and Samir's the one who took the beatings from the grandfather, so he suffers a lot from that. He's also half Indian. His dad came to America before he was born, for schooling or something, and met this American woman, and they had a relationship, and she got pregnant, and that's where Samir came from. And then there's this whole story with that, and then he was brought back to India and then raised by his half-brother's mother as a son. Like, they were raised as a son. The Indian culture in this, I absolutely love. I mean, I read another book by her earlier this year called The Bollywood Bride that I love just as much. And this one is so, so good. I highly recommend you check this author out if you're interested. What I love, the first book I read by her, I read in an ebook, but this one is on audio, and I think going forward all of her books are going to be on audio, if they keep the same narrator. At first I thought, of course, this woman's going to have an Indian accent, which I love. It's so lyrical. I don't know what it is about that accent, but it's just so lyrical. And she doesn't. She has a strictly American accent, if you will. But then when she's talking for the characters, out comes the Indian accent. And it's fabulous. And I really liked it because you were able to keep track of, you know, what was being narrated and what was being spoken, if that makes sense. I've only got maybe another hour left on this audiobook, so I should be finishing it probably tomorrow or later today. But I highly recommend this, guys. Please check this author out if you haven't. There is adult content in this book, and there is quite a bit of swearing in these books, so keep that in mind. But it's still a really great story with real topics, like really, really great topics that I think need to be discussed, my opinion. My current ebook is Never Forget Me by Marguerite Kaye. This is a Harlequin historical novel. This is 3 little novellas. It's only like a 250-page book, so it's 3 little novellas, and they all take place during World War I. Thank you so much to my viewer who pointed out that it was World War I when I was doing my TBR. One each year, like one at the beginning of the war, one in the middle of the war, and one at the end of the war. And I'm only just through the first story right now. It's not bad. It's interesting. There's a lot of explanation about things, and all 3 stories are interconnected, that they all take place in at this one location, so they kind of all revolve around characters who kind of end up at this one location. And yeah, I mean, I'm enjoying it. They're little novellas. I mean, they're relatively easy and quick reads. And my Babysitters Club book that I haven't quite started just yet because I just finished Stacey's Mistake last night is Claudia and the Bad Joke by Ann M. Martin. Of course, this is book number 19 in the Babysitters Club series. In this book, Claudia's babysitting for a practical joker, and this practical joker plays a joke on her and causes her to break her leg. And then the story goes from there. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that one. So anyway, guys, that is it for what I'm reading. I will quickly show you guys what I've been knitting and what I finished, because I did finish something this week and I wanted to show you guys because I've been showing you the progress I've made on it, and that is the hat for my niece. I finished it earlier this week, so you'll have to excuse the fact that I need to weave in ends. But yes, it does fit my head. It's a little tight, but it fits my head. Let's get that out of my face, shall we? How adorable is that? Look at the ears. Is that not the cutest thing ever? I love it. I think she's going to love it. So it's a little bit tight on me, which it's for a 7-year-old. And also, if I made it for myself, I would make this taller, or I'd make the ribbing longer. I think I'd probably make the ribbing longer because I like to be able to roll it, and it's just to the point where it's not quite long enough, but I'd like to roll it. It's for a 7-year-old. She's going to freaking love it. You know what I mean? And now I'm going to have hat head. But that's okay. But yeah, so that's what it looks like finished. So you don't see the ears until you put it on. But then right where my fingers are, right there where my fingers are, you stitch through with the yarn, and you kind of go back and forth as if you were sewing in a button. And then you pull the ends inside and weave them in. And then when you put the hat on, it causes the ears to form. So adorable. So yeah, so I'm going to weave in the ends on this, and this will be part of her Christmas present. So that's exciting. The thing that I'm actually going to be working on this week is, sorry, my hair, is a pair of socks, because you guys know I love to knit me some socks, and it's going to be a very relaxing rest of my weekend. So these are my Toil and Trouble socks, as I'm calling them, and I'm doing a really neat pattern called Running Through that was designed by my friend Brandy, where you do a slip stitch pattern in the sock. So yeah, I've just started this one. It's very, very pretty. I love the yarn. The yarn is by a company called Fiber Stash Dye Works, and it sparkles. Can you see the sparkle? The yarn sparkles. And I gotta show you the bag, because these are Halloween-y. The yarn is Halloween, so I had to get a Halloween bag. The witches are knitting. Do you see that? They're knitting. I've had this bag for a couple of years. It's by a Canadian bag maker called Zigzag Stitches, and oh, I just love this. So yeah, so that's what I'm going to be knitting this weekend. Anyway, that's it. This video is a lot longer than I intended it to be, but at least this way I got to really talk about the books that I read, and that's what was important to me. So I hope you guys like this. My hair's going to be bugging me now. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Let me know if you like this idea. In my opinion, the whole point of BookTube is to talk about books that we've been reading, or books that we want to read, and what we liked and what we didn't like, to get recommendations. And, you know, as fun as hauls are, as fun as all those other things are, and tags, the heart of BookTube is book reviews, essentially. And that's really what I wanted to focus on for you guys. So, again, I hope you like this, and let me know in the comments below what you're reading this weekend, or did you finish a great book this week that you really enjoyed? Let me know. And until my next video, guys, take care and happy reading. Bye.